Seth, take it away.
Hi, I'm Seth Michael May. This is Obscuria Films, where we review the films that we love, but you love to hate. So today we are doing double feature, our first double feature of Kids 1995 and Less Than Zero 1987. And that was the pick of Isaac Kaplan. Take it away, Isaac.
Okay. I picked these two movies. Kids was one that I grew up with. I grew up in New York City, and Kids takes place in New York City in and around the neighborhood that I grew up in and other places that I used to hang out around Manhattan. And it deals largely with a lot of kids that grew up in a similar kind of environment to me, many of whom I actually knew. I knew a bunch of people that were in this movie. And it was sort of a coming of age thing. And it's sort of an obscure film. It's got a lot of controversy around it. It's still to this day very controversial. And then much later in life, more recently, I discovered this film Less Than Zero, which takes place in Los Angeles with a bunch of mostly rich kids, and all the dysfunction that they get into after their high school graduation. And it's sort of a satire. It's a bit satirical, kind of taking a jab at the excesses of this sort of latchkey culture where you had kids in Los Angeles growing up in the 80s who had their own apartments while they were still in high school, and their parents lived somewhere else, and they were just spoiled rotten. And I can sort of relate to that a little bit. Also, I have an older sister who's kind of more from that generation, and I'm sure she saw that movie around the time it came out, and that might have been a coming of age film for her. I'd have to ask her. But, it was kind of interesting to see the parallels between basically the debauchery that was going on, that was depicted in Less Than Zero, versus the debauchery that I was more familiar with that takes place in the movie Kids. And I thought it would be sort of interesting to explore those themes and introduce some of you folks who may have never seen these two movies before into these movies. So I don't know what else. Kids. So I'll give you just a brief synopsis. If you haven't seen these and you want to see them and you don't want any spoilers, pause the video now and go watch these movies and then come back. Kids, the first scene takes place on the Upper East Side where I grew up. All the stores, all the the shops that were around my neighborhood growing up, I was familiar with literally every frame of this film was my stomping grounds. Washington Square Park. I'd take the train downtown when I was in 11, 12, 13, hang out in Washington Square Park, buy weed from the same weed dealer that they were buying from in the movie. The movie seems in a lot of ways to be almost like a documentary. The style of the narrative is sort of documentary style in a way, but a lot of people even mistook it for a documentary. And there's some stories that I heard about the main actors being basically harassed on the street by strangers who were like, how could you do that? How could you behave that way to those girls and whatever? And so basically, it's two main protagonists, and they're just kind of going, it's like a 24-hour, a day in the life of these people. It's sort of like a one-day kind of adventure story. And I was thinking the movie The Warriors, Sean had mentioned before that it's not really a story, or it doesn't have there's no story involved. It's sort of like a dystopian adventure story. It's like the heroes, it's like the anti-hero's journey. That's what I would put it into in terms of its story type. It's basically like Bad Lieutenant, how you got a guy who's he just can't stop stepping on rakes. Everything he does, he just digs himself deeper and deeper. Not exactly like that, but it's sort of just like a bunch of idiots just doing one stupid thing after another and documenting their stupid decisions. And then it all ends in basically more misery for everyone. And it's sort of like the way they were able to get around the controversy was they'd be saying, no, this is not, exploitative movie. This is a movie that's a cautionary tale. It's to teach people, to behave. That was the excuse, and it's bullshit. Right. That was the excuse that they used in order to make a very exploitative movie about children, which borders on like child porn almost. It's almost
It
criminal.
does, especially in the beginning. But the budget was 1.5 million, and the box office was 20.4 million.
Yeah.
That was one of those. That was one of those things. But yeah,
I remember it in high school too, but I was out in Long Island. And
You saw it in high
like,
school?
What?
You saw it when you were in high school?
I did. I didn't see it in theater, but I remember friends saying, "Oh, you have to watch this movie, kids," and everyone used to joke around about the "I have no legs, I have no legs." We would go to the city sometimes, but we were sort of like, it was the Long Island version of it. But I still remember I was probably 16 at the time, I think. I might have seen it in like 1996. I'm aging myself. But I still remember the first time I watched it that I was sort of shocked by it, but it was like cool to watch the movie in a way, even though it was.
I guess that. Yeah, that's part of its charm.
Yeah, Sean, you have to like put yourself in the mindset of like, you grew up not that far, like you grew up in New Jersey, but put yourself in the mindset. Okay, but still, like you understood where New York City was and that stuff went on there, and like imagine being 13 or 14 and watching that for the first time, and like the kind of impact that would have on your like mind, and sort of like these kids are doing all this crazy stuff. And
yeah, I could see it like, you know, you're a fly on the wall seeing all this debauchery, and it's kind of cool because everybody's like perverts, you know, like our individuals were kind of like perverts and voyeuristic in a way.
Well, yeah, the whole movie was trying to make you feel like what it's like to be in these groups with these kids. It's like,
yeah, but watching it so much because they're all so horny, and that's all they talk about.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to like. That's the main point for me. That's why I picked this movie. That's how we were. That is how we behaved when I was growing up. When I was going to school with some of the kids that were in that movie, they talked like that, exactly like that. They acted like that. They were constantly talking about sex. They were constantly doing and talking about drugs, and everything was just about what's the next party, who's fucking who's doing what, and like, you know, graffiti, and you know, graffiti was a big part of it. Skating was a big part of it, and getting into fights.
Yeah, and like that MTV style, like it looked like it was MTV,
and it kept going. Like I have friends that I grew up with, like that were kind of in that scene, that like by 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, they're still just going out every night, getting wasted, trying to get late, like just sleeping with every woman that they can, and basically getting into fights for fun. Still doing stupid stuff like that.
What was cool about kids is that when they beat up that one guy in Washington Square Park, the kids, they were ethnically mixed.
Yes, that was
which I thought was really cool. I was like, wow, there's black kids and white kids and Asian kids and Spanish kids all fighting all together. I haven't seen that in a while.
That's real,
by the way.
Bro.
Yeah.
That's another thing about the movie that's very interesting. That's exactly how it was.
It's more diverse then than it is today, which I think is nuts.
It's coming back around though. You go to Washington Square Park today and watch the kids who are skating. There's the white kids, the Asian kids, the black. It's like coming full circle back to that kind of. The culture hasn't really changed all that much, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, the music's changed a little bit.
Technology and stuff.
Yeah. But the whole, like, that's a New York City thing. That's what makes this movie so much different from Less Than Zero. That's one of the main distinguishing features, is that in LA, everybody's in their own little bubble. You have a bunch. Less Than Zero is about a bunch of rich kids. The movie Kids depicts how much integration there is among young people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnic groups, religious groups, what have you, and how much of a unified sort of culture all these different people from different backgrounds had. So the rich kids, the kids that, like, I grew up at that point, I was like middle class, upper middle class, you know. I wasn't, my family didn't have a lot of money yet or anything like that, but there were kids that were much, much richer that I knew, and then there were kids that were less, but we all talked the same. We all used the same slang. We all had the same kind of like attitude about things. Some of us had more money than others, but we still all had that street slang and all that shit. And that's how we were. And, you know, we all did graffiti. We all skateboarded. I was a terrible skateboarder. And I was not that great at graffiti either, but I still did it. Like, that's what we all did. We publicly urinated. We snuck into John Jay Park. That scene in the park with the swimming pool where he's smacking his schlong around.
Yeah.
That's the park I grew up in. Like, that's John Jay Park. We used to sneak in there and get high and do stuff like that all the time.
Where is that park?
It's on East End Avenue, like all the way east,
Okay.
between like 76.
Okay, we were trying to figure it out when we were watching it.
Yeah, it's basically like 77th Street on the East River.
Okay.
But it's
All right.
called Cherokee Lane. It's like this weird little like cul-de-sac thing. But yeah, that's the whole movie. Most of the movie took place in the neighborhood I grew up in. Like, most of it took place on the Upper East Side.
Yeah.
The first scene is like the first scene where he's urinating on the right after he's smashing with that girl.
Yeah.
When he comes down, when he meets up with Casper, and Casper takes out his schlong and starts peeing on the wall. Like, that was around the corner from my apartment. Literally. I grew up on 79th in York. That was 80th in York.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the delicatessen that he steals the 40 from, and like, that was the delicatessen. That was what my mom used to call the Korean vegetable store, the bodega, the Korean bodega that I grew up. Like, it's one of the main 4 bodegas that were right in, like, within a 1 block radius of my apartment growing up. So it's very much like a certain kind of weirdness, and especially seeing it now and looking at, like, some of those storefronts are still there today, but the things look different, like the buses and the cars and like the graffiti. And like, it's like so sentimental. It brings back so many memories for me.
I was just gonna say that I think for people, because I watched this with my husband. These 2 films, my husband wouldn't let me watch without him, and he just was like watching it, and we were just trying to figure out what it was like. And for him, because he's just slightly older, but he was saying it's accurate because he grew up in Jersey, but he would come into the city, and so he was like, oh yeah, I hung out with kids like that. So I think it depends on the person watching it. There might be some people who watch this movie and are just completely horrified. Maybe they just didn't have that. For me, watching it when I was a teenager, I would say in Long Island, it was probably like, if that was like a level 10, the Long Island crew was probably like a level 8.
Yeah.
Where like, they did jump people, but it wasn't to the same extent. People did get 40s from the delis. It was just like the Long Island version of it, but I think you could relate to it. And maybe at least the crew that I rolled with wasn't as sexual all the time, like in the movie, but I think the movie took it to the nth degree, which, maybe was your experience, but mine was like that plus sports or something, just that was the definition of it. But I think for what people were saying is that it's definitely like a time capsule film. Like, if you want to just get that snapshot of like what it looked like in the city that time, and what I don't think all kids were doing that. I'm sure there was kids that were playing violin, but there was a certain culture going on. Like, not everybody's degenerate.
But even a lot of the goody two shoes type of kids were still associated with some of these other, like, there was no insulation.
Yes, but it might not have been their daily life. Like, they might have tapped in and then gone to like ballet class. Right.
But by a certain age, it's almost like you couldn't avoid that stuff.
Yeah.
It was gonna come, like, no matter who you were or how well behaved you were, that was gonna. And I think that's an important takeaway, like, because it's the culture and it's the system that allowed for kids to become like this. Like, it's not these kids' fault. It's the fault of the parents. It's the fault of the schools and the society overall that creates these really brutal, sort of competitive. I mean, it's like very dog-eat-dog type of environment to grow up, in like any school system. It doesn't even have to be in an urban environment. Like, you get a bunch of kids together and they're like, they're only hanging out with other kids, and I don't know, they don't have
but there was
models.
there was a whole city around these kids, and I guess if you put it in kids from anywhere into like the city, then maybe they'll act the same. But and that's cool, and that's why I like at least respect this. But I can't believe I watched this thing, because I'm just never really into that. Just never really into that whole mid '90s Clerks thing. Never really liked Clerks. I never liked any of that Gus Van Sant experimental stuff.
And he's the executive producer.
Exactly.
Van
And
Sant.
I didn't like My Own Private Idaho, I guess, but I could do without the interviews in My Own Private Idaho. Like I just don't understand that. So it's like the filmmakers are taking a point that's in society and like exploiting it. And then the extreme juxtaposition between, yeah, they're children basically, and they're doing all this adult stuff, but they do that for 90 minutes. There's no layers. There's no this or why or whatever else. And I guess that's the point, because they wanted to keep it a budget low. They're like, no, the point is that, this is, whatever ellipses.
I'm going to go
This is what I
back.
got.
And I'm going to go back to what I initially said, which is the merit of this film is that it took a documentary style approach, scripted it, and gave you a snapshot better than any snapshot you could ever get in any other film ever about that time and that place and those people.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
it.
I guess.
You can say
I really don't care about these people. That's my problem with the film. I don't care about any of them.
Yeah.
And I should care, but there is a story. The main character, we haven't said, is into spreading his AIDS virus to virgins.
Well, he doesn't know
he doesn't know he has HIV.
Right, but still.
And I know, and I didn't like that was a dirty trick in the end of the film. When Leo Fitzpatrick, the telly guy, the lead, has a narration. Because he didn't have narration at all throughout the whole thing.
No, he did. No, you're
no,
wrong.
He didn't.
Bro, see, you have to watch these. If you really want to make those kind of, you got to really watch the movies more than once, because
no, where was the narration then?
There was only a little bit of narration in the very beginning and a little bit of narration at the very end. It was very well coordinated.
I don't remember the
beginning.
stuff in the beginning.
The beginning is virgins. I love them.
Oh yeah.
And then the end is basically like, you know what? It's just, I can't help it.
All right, fine. It was in the beginning.
So it was.
No, but that's the thing. I don't like that, because then it's like, oh wait, if he stops giving AIDS to virgins, then he doesn't have a cause for what he wants to do.
Bro.
Well, that's what it sounded like.
That's idiotic,
that
bro.
is what the movie sounds like. Really,
what?
I agree
what
with
the movie
Sean.
is. What the movie is saying, it's saying that these kids don't know what the hell they're doing and what's going on, and they're not dealing with any of the consequences.
And they did it well.
He didn't know he had HIV. He's just being an idiot.
They did it well, but it was 90 minutes. That's a long time. And I kind of dig the end. You see all these kids who are half naked, all of them, like just all spread out on the couches, elbows touching, all like sleeping together, like there's some sort of pack or tribe. Like that's what it seemed like, and I get it.
That's what it was.
I get the visuals, yeah, but it was, and then he's like, but then the whole thing in like the near end when Justin Pierce is doing his thing to Chloe 70, there was a shot of like Justin doing his thing to Chloe, and then in the corner of the frame was like a young black child's face. And I was like, come on, man. How much is this? We're gonna have rape and then a child? I fucking get it.
They're all children.
I know, but then why do you gotta just like the juxtaposition? They just like, yeah, let's just make it more ridiculous and horrible. It was just no, that's not the word. They just try to make it more shocking.
Yeah.
All right.
It's shocking, but it's also can be real, which I think is like, this is a conversation my husband and I were having about it. It pushes the boundaries, but it's of reality. It's the uncomfortable truths of culture, that these things happen that we maybe don't want to take a look at because they evoke these emotions in us that we're like, oh, this is not, but it can be real.
Yeah. And it's fair to criticize that and say that, you know what, the telling an exact, accurate depiction of what actually happens is not the best storytelling. And like, I understand that point of view, and there are not many movies like this that I would defend. And partially I defend this movie just because it's so unbelievably, it's not easy to make a movie that is that accurate at depicting the behaviors of certain people, and for it to be an actual scripted film with a pace to it and an arc, and and for it to be actually, it is still an entertaining film. I mean, it's a film it's not boring. There's no scene in this film where you're like, oh, I'm fucking bored. I don't want to know I don't care what happens next. You may not care what happens to the characters, but you definitely want to see what happens next, because it's like, this is a movie that it's almost like a fuck you to the parents. It's like, you fucking parents think you know your kids and what they're up to. You have no idea what these kids are doing,
Yeah,
and you have no control over them.
That was
And
the poster. That was like the poster theme. That was their their campaign motto. Is what you were saying at like.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think this is great. I mean, like, this is a movie that I'm going to see with my kids someday, God willing, and explain to them that, because I went through this, you didn't have to go through this because I insulated you from it. Like, I can't. It's hard for me to watch on some level, be like, yeah, like we were really that freaking out of control.
It's like there's not one redeeming quality.
No, there isn't. I'm in Sean's camp.
There's not
on
one.
this one.
Even in the end. Go ahead, Seth. Go ahead.
Well, it's 1995. I moved into the city in 1994. The AIDS virus is like going crazy at that point. Like, you would see people, in short sleeve shirts, and you would see red marks on their arms, and you'd be like, oh, that guy's gonna die. Like, there was
And the clothes.
There was still nothing against HIV. So it's a really dark film because it doesn't even deal with that consequence.
It's like okay, yeah.
Well, it's like it's so fresh in everybody's mind. Everybody understood that, like, that's a death sentence. That this is, like, at that time, like exactly what you're saying. That nothing needed to be said. It was almost just like, oh shit.
Okay, but
this is happening.
But I understand this movie works great as an art piece. But in the end, when Chloe, after her journey of finding Telly, Chloe in the beginning, I think it's her movie. To me, she's the main character because it's like she's barely in it, whatever. But yeah, she finds out she has AIDS, then she's on a journey to talk to Telly. She doesn't know what she's going to say, but that's like a childish thing. It's cool. And you dip in, and she finds him. She finds him in the end, and he's sleeping with that Marcy virgin chick, and Chloe knows. Darcy. Chloe knows Telly has AIDS, and he's letting Telly give it to Darcy. Because right then, he's like, close the door, and she leaves. She doesn't stop it. So what was the journey? Even then, you're not going to stop and then she gets raped on the couch 30 seconds later. I was like, to me, it was like, that was at least the movie's chance to be like, get the fuck out of here. And you hit Telly in the head with a lamp, and then, get her out of there and whatever else. That's
again, that's what would work in a real movie or something. But that's not what happens in real life. What happens in real life is that the girl doesn't know what the hell she's trying to do or why she's on all these weird drugs from the other party.
Yeah,
that kid with the weird glasses in the party, that's Harmony Korine. Yeah, that's the writer.
That was Harmony?
That was Harmony Korine, yeah. And so I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name properly. It's actually Korine is actually a derivative of Cohen. It's a Jewish name.
Okay.
Korine, Kohan, those are all the same name. So basically Harmony Cohen. Anyway, this so he gives her the pill, and she's fucked up, and she's doing on drugs, and she's on all this shit. A dumb girl who, like, she doesn't know what to do. Like, that's what she would do in real life. She'd go into the room and be so shocked that he's like doing that, and like and he's screaming at her, shut the fucking door, shut the door. She's high as hell. She's freaked out. Like, she's not going to run in there and pull him off of her. Yeah. She's going to go into the living room and pass out on the couch and get something done to her by that other creep, Like, it's kind of like, it's plausible. Her pulling him off of that girl and being like, or screaming, don't stop having sex, he's got HIV or whatever. This is less plausible. But probably a better moral. It's probably a more moral ending to a story that's not really trying to tell you. It's a very disingenuous film.
Yeah.
It's really just, they wanted to show what Larry Clark really was trying to do is be like, I want to show people this is these kids are fascinating. These people that I see in Washington Square Park with their skateboards, the way they talk, the way they behave, their lifestyle, it's fascinating. I want to document it. I want people to see what it's like in New York City, and it's an art film. That's what it is. It's just like
Yeah.
it's just like the movie. What was that? What's that movie with what's his name? Basquiat. Seth, you know what I'm talking about?
No,
No, the
but I mean,
documentary?
it is a movie that I would say
It's like another
you
80.
should
It's like
see at their local modern art museum. Like
yeah.
it's definitely like there's no other movie like it. But
I
you know,
agree.
I can't give it a thumbs up.
But also, even Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. By the way,
Did they?
But, yes,
This was a very well received movie by the critics because critics love controversial shit.
I think it's.
Yeah.
I think it's because they get it. They understand. Like, wait, the docu style. So this is it. Oh, I get it. If you just make a critic feel smart, they're gonna like your movie.
That's true.
I mean, so there's just that meaning, like, it's just maybe I'm being a jerk. I just didn't think it was like that deep, but I thought it like that docu style wasn't really an artistic choice.
We also have to say that too. Okay, go on.
I just thought it was a budget choice.
No, I don't
What-
think so.
What can we do? And they just did it. As opposed to be like, if we do it like that, yeah, there was found footage in there, but that was cool too. But you just lean into what you could afford. It didn't seem like that to me. Because I just think it.
This movie is remembered mostly because 2 of the people in it are dead
Oh yeah,
from the
Justin
lifestyle.
Pierce.
Well, which two? I know Casper.
Casper.
Casper's
And
dead.
And
the
he passed away from what?
And Harold
How-
Hunter died. I was friends with him too.
Which
Harold Hunter is the black kid who's he was actually a pro skater. The one in the swimming pool where he's smacking his dick
Oh,
around.
yeah.
That's and he was best friend. He was best friends with. We had a mutual best friend in common. Dash Snow, who also died, who was a famous artist.
Wow.
And so like it was a sort of pretty incestuous ecosystem. Like everybody I grew up with was like 1 degree or less of separation from these guys. Like and that's what it was. And so I mean a lot of kids who hung out in those crowds are dead. A lot of kids that I grew up with are dead. And when you go through enough type of trauma and start doing like heavy drugs young enough, the chances are you're way more likely to end up in a situation where you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so again, this movie was actually sort of it's a mild version. We take the HIV narrative out of it, just the behavior. This was a mild depiction of what it was really like, a little bit more mild. We were a little crazier than that.
But that's what I mean by like it doesn't really have a story because
no,
that's the only story is Chloe Sevigny's story.
The whole exactly. And they had to do that in order to be able to justify making the film. I think that's what it was.
One fun
their
fact,
way of like saying we want to just show fucked up kids doing fucked up shit because this is kind of interesting that they're like this. And then they were like, well, we have to have some kind of a story, and it has to have some kind of a moral, it has to be a fable of some sort. This is what happens to little boys and girls when they act like it's like
this is mind. It's like if Howard Stern made a movie. There's that.
That's good.
But also one fun fact about this: Chloe Sevigny during the movie dated Justin Pierce. And they were like an item like for real.
They all knew each other before the movie got made.
But then Chloe switched on off to Harmony Korine and became his girlfriend. And I think that was more of like a calculated move there. See that?
I see what she did there.
Around. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, that's another.
Sorry, guys.
Hey, listen. Hey, we got to point out the elephant in the room here. This movie produced a couple of big ass stars.
Yeah. Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson. If you're a Rosario Dawson fan or a Chloe Sevigny fan, you ought to see this movie because if it wasn't for this movie, they would have never become what they did. This movie was the launch pad for them.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's just it's like the equivalent of bum fights. I wrote some notes here. Okay, so This is my mini essay in response to kids. So if I was in a film class and this was an assignment, this would be my mini essay. It's not too long.
What do you think this is, Sean? That's exactly what this is.
Okay, all right.
And you're our greatest dissenting voice.
Oh, I tried. Just because I'm shocked and the decadence is real doesn't mean there is a message. Stuff like this is an excuse to get a grant from an art foundation. The pitch being, do you know what your kids are doing today? And then they get the money. The only thing the filmmakers do is show the juxtaposition of youth to their irresponsible actions, like this movie is an anti-smoking ad.
100%, bro. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. You hit the nail on the head.
But
A+.
that's why I didn't see but that's why I didn't see the movie back in 1995, exactly for that reason. Like I knew it. I didn't want to see this movie.
Let me ask you something. If you had known the kids, growing up around some of these kids, one of the kids in the movie, there's one kid in that movie who jumped me and held me hostage for like an entire evening.
Really?
Yes, there was one kid in that movie. I'm not going to mention his name and who he was because I don't want to. He's a decent human being now. I don't want to call him out.
Okay, I get it.
But basically, he was a few years older than me, and he went to my school, and he pulled a knife on me. I was in the park with my friend, and it was like him and a bunch of other kids, and and he was like, "Yo, you got any money?" And he like pulled a knife out. He's like, "Where do you think you're going? You sit." And basically, he just like had a knife, and he was like, "Don't go anywhere." And basically, it was just fucking with me for about what felt like 2 or 3 hours, and then finally he let me go. He was actually dating another girl in my school that ended up becoming a somewhat well-known actress. That I'll tell you guys about that off the camera. I don't want to bring their names into this, but but like I was jumped by one of the kids in that movie. Like you can't. It's hard for me to be objective. Like I think if I hadn't been so intimately connected with people that were in this movie, I probably think it's a piece of garbage and like why but the fact that
it's garbage.
The fact that it was such a like voyeuristic like look into a really big part of my coming of age, and it is a fucked up kind of coming of age movie in a way, it's just made it impossible for me to ignore it. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess the movie is like a journey or some sort of rite of passage into adulthood. I could see that.
I was the age of the scenes with the little boys, like the Hispanic boys sitting on the couch all next to each other with their shirts off, sharing a joint, and it just sounds so. That was the best scene in the whole movie because they're sitting there and they're like, man, because you see that they're not like the other kids who are 15, 16, 17, 18. They're 12, 13. They're chill. They are babies.
Yeah.
That's how old I was. And I was like those kids hanging out with the older kids. And, man, your big brother gets the best weed. Yeah, you're right. This is some good weed. Where does he get it? I don't know. He won't tell me where he gets it. And like it shows their innocence and their like corruption and the fact that they're like in this weird in-between stage where they're saying like, and then the other kid, they're making fun of him. They're like, "You're still a virgin, aren't you?" That whole scene. Remember that scene where the kid, the white boy, who's like, ends up like getting, I guess he loses her virginity or he hooks up with some older girl.
Something, yeah.
He does something. Those scenes were so like, they're like so hard for me to watch because like I remember that stuff. I remember the first older kids who did drugs with me. I remember a bunch of other things that I can't talk about on YouTube that were kind of similar to things in that movie. Like I remember first this and first that, and it was usually tied up in some kind of weird party like that. And I don't know.
It's funny about that scene because that scene, like the guy who owned the place or who lived there was that older Spanish guy. And I remember him and Telly were talking and stuff, and I forget how they started talking about it.
That's the scene that's in the dumpy apartment where they're doing whippets, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's the scene with the kid who jumped me.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Because we're on this scene. The Spanish guy, he's like, "Hey, man, if you want to rent the bathtub, do it for $200 or something." And they were talking rent. I'm like, wait, is this guy going to rent out his fucking bathtub to some kids because that's just the way this place is like to me that was really I just dug that. To me that was like a good moment in the like that was an actual movie where I was like, whoa, because the rest of it was just
What about the scene where he's stealing money from his mom and she's breastfeeding the baby and like there's all this like
yeah, I guess and then
this sort
Justin
of double
Pierce-
deception going on between mother and son.
yeah, and then just
Like if I had $1, baby, I'd give you one, but I don't have $1. But he knows where she keeps the money, and he's
Yeah.
it's just like
He's also smoking a cigarette too.
yeah,
While
smoking a cigarette while
breastfeeding,
she's
yeah.
breastfeeding. Yeah, I knew moms like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That shit is real.
Yep.
But
So can we talk about our 1987 flick?
yeah, I think we should. Actually, was thinking
Yeah.
the same thing.
Us.
So moving
Go
on
back
to
in time.
Less Than Zero. Who wants to? Who wants
Less
to take it
Than
away?
Zero is like watching Robert Downey Jr. in Less Than Zero is like watching the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Like he went to jail during this movie. I found out.
During the shooting of this movie?
Yeah, the director encouraged him and what's his name?
Eric Canavicia or something.
The
Merrick
directors
Canavisca.
encouraged him and the other guy, Andrew McCarthy, to go out to bond, and the result of that was the director having to bust him out of jail. So that was like the beginning. You're basically watching the beginning of like Robert Downey Jr.'s first big fall is when you're watching Less Than Zero. He's the best thing in it, him and James Spader.
It's really their movie.
Yeah.
They're the protagonists of the movie.
And Jamie Gertz. I think she's wonderful.
Jamie Gertz was in and out for me. It's either a great performance of a girl on coke or she's on coke and it's fucking up her performance. And I can't tell.
Yeah, maybe. But even the dialogue, I really liked. It really did have that Bret Easton Ellis feel. And I'm not a big fan of his. But I do dig it, especially when it's like this, because it was so visual that it kind of made up, because the whole thing about like Bret is that it's kind of vapid. That's his whole like artistic choice. We show things but make it vapid, somehow there's a deeper meaning, which is cool.
But that's why that's another way in which these two films have a lot of overlap. I mean, like what the reason that this movie is so significant is only one thing. It's the scene, it's the moment where James Spader is having a very like the whole movie to me is that it comes down to this one moment. You know, James Spader's the drug dealer, and Robert Downey Jr.'s character, he's so deep in the hole at this point, he's never going to be able to pay him back for all the drugs that he fronted him. And he's like, man, I screwed up. That's it. I just don't have the money. And James Spader is like, okay, it's all right. It's all right. Here's what we're going to do. It's going to be okay. I'm going to have you're just going to do a little work for some people. You're going to do a little work. And, you're going to work and you're going to pay it off and then it'll be okay. And then like, he's all of a sudden in like the worst hell that I can't imagine a worse hell than that. Like being in prison and being like a bitch in prison. I mean, this is worse almost. Like these guys, he's got to go around with these guys and he's being tricked. Yeah, he's being prostituted out to all these men. And it's just like, wow, that's the reason they made this movie. That's the whole aspect of this movie that's going to get everybody talking about it. It's sort of it's sort of like it's sort of a gimmick, but a really, really powerful gimmick.
I
like this movie wouldn't have been anything without that theme, without that.
I do know that scene. Wait, and I do know that scene, and there was another scene between James and Robert when Robert says, I'm really done. I'm going to get you back. I'll work it out with my dad.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you your money. But then he like, I leaves, and then they get him high, and Robert is like, I don't know if I could do this, but James is like, oh, I think we both know you can.
And the other guy's
Yeah.
heating up the crack pipe for him.
Yeah. No. James says, I think you'll be surprised about what you can do. That's what he says in the movie.
Oh,
I don't know if I
that's
could
the line.
do this. I think you'll be surprised about what
you can do. Yeah.
And that was like, that scene was that was good. I could see that. You know, especially how it ties in with kids, because like the youth, and they kind of get meet up in the meat grinder of society.
I mean, to be honest with you, I found Less Than Zero to be a much more disturbing film.
Yeah, Robert was really.
I mean,
intense when they did with his
I
lips.
couldn't get that out of my mind. The way that Robert Downey did, really sick, disturbing movie, and also I guess somewhat plausible. Like I'm sure something like that has happened to some like rich kid in LA who.
Yeah, it seems like it, and it was the tone was amazing. I love the burgundies and the pinks and the purples. It was everywhere. The art direction was gorgeous.
I thought it was great too.
It was
And
like it was.
The art direction
80s
was
cheese.
amazing. Yeah.
It wasn't even 80s cheese, but
When
it was
they
one of the most 80s
walk
things I've
into
ever seen.
Right when they walk into that party, the
Yeah,
Christmas
the
party, and the
pink-
TVs everywhere, and
Yeah,
it's so
I was
80s.
like, look at
It's
this.
a really, again,
This
another
is
good.
fantastic.
It's like another good snapshot film.
It was like, wow, this is great. You know, yeah. And there was
that's
a
what
lot
I'd
of
want.
parties.
I'd want to know somebody who grew up in LA in that time, like
Yeah.
somebody like who's like maybe 50 now, who was like a teenager hanging out, and like I want to know from the audience, from somebody who's been through that, was that as accurate a depiction of what that time was like as kids was for me? Like that's the kind of thing I would want to know.
Well, the production designer, Barbara Ling, did a little movie recently called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Really?
Also did Falling Down and Fried
Nice.
Green Tomatoes.
Wait,
Both
this
good
is
films. These are
this
both
is
good.
what does she do? She's the what?
She's the production designer. She's the
Oh.
one who's making all the artistic choices of the overall look of the film.
Beautiful job.
Did you say also fried green tomatoes?
Fried Green Tomatoes, yeah.
Bless you. Yeah, both of those are really
And
great
Falling Down.
movies.
Wow.
And Falling Down.
And she was the production designer on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
In Hollywood.
It's
Her
like
name is Barbara Ling.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that.
the one thing about this is that it is an 80s movie, but I thought about it, and it's not a Brat Pack one. So it's kind of cool. It's a movie about youth in the 80s that's not a Brat Pack movie, so it's like a rare category
It's
here.
sort of like a Brat Pack spinoff type
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
thing. though.
they definitely have the Brad Pack in mind. In fact, some of the choices that the studio kind of pressured them on with Andrew McCarthy are because they didn't want to isolate his female fan base
Oh.
from the Brad Pack movies. I read that. I was like, why is he so meh in this movie?
Yeah, he is the weakest link. But what's cool about this is that the soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a while.
It is a great soundtrack. And
It's
did
amazing.
you catch who the musicians at the party are?
Yeah, that
Red
was
Hot
the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
The Red Hot
Is-
Chili Peppers.
Yeah,
Is
Flea
that-
was
They
they
have a
were-
song in the movie, but they're playing it live.
That's just
Lee's
great.
in the movie. Anthony Kiedis
Paul,
under a different name.
and you get music from Paul Simon, Joan Jett, Public Enemy, Glenn Danzig of the Misfits, LL Cool J, Roy Orbison, Run DMC, David Lee Roth, The Cult, and Slayer, the death metal band, does a cover of Indigada Vida.
And Kiss. And it's the Bangles cover of the
Oh,
Paul
yeah.
Simon too.
And somebody did a cover of Quiet Riot in there too, and The Doors. And The Doors. It's like that's like I like that because like in the 80s they still listened to The Doors and Roy Orbison. And I like that's genius to me. Just because it's an 80s movie doesn't mean it all has to be 80s music. People still drove like like a 67 Corvette. Andrew McCarthy was driving around the whole like movie.
I think everybody involved in this film understood that they were making a really edgy film,
Yeah.
and
But
they
I
were
like
like
that.
really proud of it. And
They
I think
mashed
Bret
things so
Easton
well.
Ellis at the time was like these guys think that they're really edgy, making a nice little edgy movie out of my book, but I'm the real edgy guy. And he had a lot of negative things to say about the film. But as he got older and was able to look back in time, I think he actually appreciated how truly edgy this movie was for its time and how it really did sort of capture the flavor of his book. And, you know, I think he was a little more humble about it.
And can I, yeah.
But I think that's what it was. It was almost like it seems like there was probably a pissing contest between the filmmakers and the novelists, because like it's a very different movie than the book. There always is.
I just feel like that's common. I think of
Yeah.
Stephen King.
Oh
He's
yeah.
always- like he usually always has a problem unless Mick Garris does it.
Unless
But
what?
Unless
when
Mick
did
likes
they-
this
I'm
director
sorry.
Mick Garris.
Mick Harris.
Mick
the
Harris, yeah.
director. Yeah, Mick,
like
Mick
this-
Harris does a lot of Stephen King stuff.
So he didn't like. So Stephen King didn't like
The Shining.
The Shining.
He hates The Shining. Hates it.
I don't get it. Like rabbits that look like a bush hopping around isn't scary. That was in the book. That's not scary. I don't care what anybody says. And I'll tell you this: a polo mallet, it's like a cartoon. You give him an axe. You give an axe murderer an axe. A polo mallet? I'm going to murder you with a tennis racket? Not even a baseball bat, man.
Right.
It's just you ungrateful. So I'll stop.
So I have a question. When is it in the 80s where they decided that if you're going to make a movie and it's going to be popular, the character has to have an iconic car? When does that go? I know it starts with The Graduate. He has like this little Italian something, but that's in the 60s or 70s.
6 to 7.
Ferris Bueller, there's a Porsche or a Ferrari. I can't remember
Ferrari.
which. Ferrari.
I think that goes to the whole theme of like these rich parents who don't know what to do with their money other than spoil their kids, and they feel
I
like
understand where it comes from in the story, but I want to know where somebody sits around and goes, whose car company can we get to like donate their sports car to this movie?
Yeah,
'Cause-
that Corvette needed an auto mechanic crew to maintain that car. They needed a whole crew.
Because I remember in Rain Man, there was a car,
Yeah,
a car.
the Buick.
There's a Buick. Yeah, there's just like a certain number of like films through the. I guess
you mean
it's
you're talking about like where the car is actually like a character in the
Character.
It's
film.
like a character, yeah. It's like
And
a
you're
character.
right. I didn't. Hey Seth, and until you said it,
I didn't even think
I
of
didn't
that.
realize. But you're right. I'm thinking
Yeah.
back. Yeah, me neither. The
Well,
DeLorean.
he takes her out in
know?
the car and he makes love to her in the car, and then it's like this music video where these
Yeah.
bikers are going
The
by.
bikers, yeah.
I still remember. I wrote that down.
And they
That
got the
shit
wind
didn't make
machine
any
going.
sense at all.
Did they get a
And there's
biker
never any other
gang?
cars.
Right. It was just a biker gang driving for like 3 minutes.
You
The
know
largest biker gang.
what they did was they took the chorus of muses, and instead of having a chorus of muses, they just turned them into a bunch of bikers.
I think it was cool because visually it was cool, and it was so long it was kind of ridiculous because they kept cut to her, cut to him, cut to her, cut to him, and it kept on doing that. But go ahead.
I told Isaac, I was like, this is the point after Risky Business that you have to have a wind machine in your love scenes, and you have to outdo the love scene on the train in Risky Business.
I think I know what
And-
was happening in this decision. I think the guys were sitting around like, how do we make this scene more romantic? I know what we could do. We'll make it a rainstorm, and it'll be thunder and lightning, and then they're gonna be all wet. It's like, and then the guy's like, "That's a good idea, but I got a better idea. Why don't we just, there's a lot of bikers in LA. We'll just make vroom, 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 vroom."
You get a vroom in the lights, and they're kissing. Get it? And they're kissing.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would the bike? No, but there's bikers, and it would be cool looking. And it's totally
kissing.
ridiculous.
I haven't seen a love scene in a convertible except for Crash. That's
Crash.
That's what it made me think of. I was like, who would grind a girl up in a little two-seater convertible while bikers go by? This is
And they're like
This is
excited about it. They're like smiling at the bikers.
Yeah.
Oh, the bikers.
Hey,
It's like
dude.
the bikers are like cheering them on or something.
Yeah, dude, you're getting some
Also,
clam.
let me just say this: there was another heavier sex scene. There was another sex scene, and that was a hot sex scene. I mean, honestly, there's a
The
good,
one where they're at the dinner party and they sneak out.
No, I meant like back at their like the first time they have sex when they get back together. When Jamie Gertz and Andrew McCarthy have sex for the first time in the movie.
I thought that
For
was
the first time, and she's on top.
Yeah, she's
Like
on top.
after
Seth
death.
knows.
Where did Seth go? Where'd you go, Seth?
I'm sorry, I don't know where a phone call came in. It's blocking my camera.
Uh,
Sorry. Keep talking, kids.
Sure,
While I fix
sure.
it.
just
I think the cinematography is brilliant, and I thought it was a very accurate portrayal of addiction. Because I really dug how Robert Downey Jr. was homeless the whole movie, because that was something he had to fight against, and they have to find him and stuff. And it did kind of get repetitive, where he's just like Robert Downey Jr. is making excuses for himself. But I guess
that's how they behave.
that's how it is, and it got kind of annoying. I get it, but
But I think that's good. I think they wanted the audience to get annoyed with him and then to feel bad for him.
Because then when he dies, and then they had that monologue in like the end. I thought it was just real, because when I got it on VHS, I saw it. I'm like, cool, right? And I saw it again, and I'm like, this is really good. Everybody talks about The Breakfast Club, but I really like this movie. It was just gorgeous.
I mean, I got to be
Brad Pitt
honest
was
with
in
you.
it.
I think this is like my new favorite like 80s teen
Yeah.
film.
right?
This is just
Like,
so fucked up.
and it's so different from the other ones too, because they're not in high school, but they are still young. So the high school thing is out of it, but they still have the characters out of high school, and they still act like that. And
Yeah.
James Spader, remember when Andrew McCarthy goes to James Spader, and James Spader's in the pool, and he's like, "Stay away from Julian." But James Spader, did you see his phone? It was a waterproof.
It was a waterproof phone, and he slammed
And he
it in
just
the hot
puts it
tub.
on the water and it floats. The dude had a phone that could go on the water. There was an editing mistake.
Yeah,
in that
I don't
scene,
even
but-
have one of those.
Yeah, like that's hot. To me, that's like not
Judy,
cheese,
what
it's
happened to
food.
your resolution?
I don't know. It's my computer is acting up.
I don't think the universe wants us talking about these movies.
Yeah, it's a bad.
long are we
bad
at?
thing.
And let me adjust it.
Now, who do you? First of all, did you see Brad Pitt as the party goer?
No, I tried
I
to
missed
pause
that.
it. I tried to
Yeah,
pause it.
he's in
saying,
there.
"Do it."
He's uncredited. He's the preppy kid at the fight, but it's hard. You can't find him. He got $38 to do that part.
Wow.
Also, you know what? A character I thought was a real 80s thing where like you just laugh at it now is James Spader's Thug.
Oh,
Yeah,
the mullet
Bill.
guy. The thugs were really weird. But that
Bill.
this was completely not something they could have foreseen or done intentionally. But the juxtaposition of these weird looking 80s blonde, like goyish looking thugs, it's like with what they're making Robert Downey Jr. do, it made it all the more like creepy and
Yeah, it was more creepy.
like, who the fuck are these guys? These are the guys that do this kind of stuff? Like some weird
is how it
looking white
happens.
guy with the blonde mullet.
Weird white guy who likes to show off his arms and like a West Hollywood shirt.
Yeah.
Like kind of gay with the like scar
Yeah.
through his eyebrow.
Yeah,
That's
kinda
Buck
gay.
Who came to fuck, by the way.
He was kind of gay. I was still
Yeah.
scared of him, but he's kind of gay.
Well, I mean,
Remember in
look at
Kill Bill, Buck Who
Yeah.
Came to Fuck?
Yeah.
That's Buck Who Came to Fuck.
You're kidding.
No, that's this thug.
Get out of here. What was his name?
It's
Bill.
true.
I'm looking.
He's also in Jackie Brown.
oh, okay.
Quentin
I
does
don't
know talent when he sees it. I'll give Quentin that.
No, those
Yeah.
guys are super creepy. I mean, it's like it's way better than if they were to use some like Mexican cholo gangsters or something like that. That they've picked these like weird blonde guys with mullets.
And it was
There-
weird because
there
that's. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Seth.
Well, there's just so many guys like that in 80s movies who just look like they don't look like muscle. They look like glamour muscle. They look like they just work out to look big, to be a bouncer at like a Hollywood club. But in reality, like the guy who can really reclaim your car as a repo man or kick your ass for the mafia is not going to look like that when he shows up. So I just think it's funny, but it makes sense that a rich kid like James Spader would have that as his thug instead of like a real deal thug.
That's the other thing I'm trying to understand is James Spader seems to introduce himself to the audience as the sort of like adjacent to the rich kids regular guy who doesn't have money like these guys do, but he has access to them. And then when you see him in the pool with the phone, you're wondering, is this just some deranged rich kid who is also a drug dealer? Yeah. Or is this some like some kind of like middle class kid who went to school with these rich kids and decided he figured out how to make his fortune selling? Like, is he a rich guy with a cell phone?
I went to school in Ridgewood, New Jersey, which has a lot of money. And there was actually a coke ring in our school, in the town, which led into our school being investigated by the FBI when I went to school in the 80s. So in 87, it was like 2 years before I graduated. There were kids who went into New York City to get stuff. You know, they were the kids who like made that trip, and everybody knew who they were and to go to their parties if you wanted to buy in. I never saw cocaine in Ridgewood, but there's evidently a lot of it.
Okay, but my question still stands. Take one of those kids as an example. Did any of those 16-year-old kids who were doing that then continue doing it? And by the age of 19, 20, now they've got this mansion with the hot tub and the cell phone like James Spader. Or were they just
I think
rich
if their
kids
parents kicked them out,
drugs?
they could have.
Yeah. I never met any. I've known a couple of kids like that in my life, and like they were selling weed, not coke, and they made lots of money, and because they were just savvy business people, and they could have done anything. Like their parents were rich, like, but they just were like they liked to sell drugs, you know, whatever.
It's fun.
There's always people like that.
Yeah, but
I don't know if we're gonna be able to air this episode.
No, yeah, it's fine.
I'm kidding.
It's fine.
But what I really
didn't say who they were.
Yeah, no, but what I really liked about this film is the Robert Downey Jr. acting choice. I don't know who made the choice, but he's like always that the drama comes from his optimism, because he's so like upbeat and he wants to make you feel better. I'm sorry, all this other stuff. And then he gets hurt in the movie when his uncle turns him down for the investment. He's hurt, and then when Robert Downey Jr. was at like the Christmas party sneaking outside, he was upset then. And maybe there was one other time, but he was really optimistic the whole time. I thought with his dad in the workout room, he was upset there, but also it was like that whole time he was so optimistic. And I thought that's like a very smart choice. If somebody's going down, 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 if they stay happy about where they're going, and you see they're going down, but they're happy about it, it just makes it more emotional and deep. Like that's layers. And maybe and the dialogue, I forgot who wrote it.
It's the layers that you don't see in kids.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
There are layers in this movie.
And
like if you like acting layers, it's here. But
no, this is a real movie.
Yeah, it was a real movie. Yeah, it was made by a studio. It's a real movie. But it still has stuff in it that's unbelievable. And like you're like, what? Like the ending to me.
Oh, it's.
Wait, here's a fun fact.
Kids, if you want to know, if you're obsessed with a girl and you can't get her back, just wait till the guy dies and be next to her. And then say, hey, I really want you to come to school and live with me. And she'll say, okay. And then life will be happy after that. But, your friend has to overdose for that to happen. But it's okay. Like that's the end of the movie. It's like, I'm really going to miss him. I'm going to miss him too.
The guy who adapted
want to come up to school with me? Yeah. End of movie.
Oh. The guy who wrote this, Harley Payton, was his first screenplay. After this, he wrote numerous episodes of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
The original.
Yeah.
Which is like, what? That's just strange. And then he wrote go ahead.
it's a very the story is a very creepy story.
Yeah, I just think that was like,
And
yeah, it
Twin
makes
Peaks
sense.
is a very creepy show.
It did have a Twin Peaks kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's just like slow and weird.
I think it was the dialogue because they weren't talking about what they were talking about, which is cool. But it was so empty. Like the words were so empty that the acting had to kind of fill it in. And Jamie Gertz did a great job in that because she actually had to be like, I'm just saying she had the difficult role, like the more difficult role.
Yeah,
Because-
Jamie Gertz's character is interesting because she's a cokehead who's concerned about her friend who's a bigger cokehead than she
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Like, there's always someone who can handle their beverage or their drug, and they're concerned about the person who can't,
Yeah.
But I feel like in a couple years she'd be just as bad with her coke addiction. But right now she's like, oh, you got to talk to him because he's a mess. Meanwhile, she's like putting a spoon up her nose to get through a day of modeling. She's like, but you got to talk to him. He's a real mess.
He's the mess, yeah. What was I going to say? I forgot.
Also,
Her career
another
was working out too. She was on. She makes a comment at some point where she says she had a better year than she anticipated. So she's actually, doing the drugs, but on the rise, doing what she says she wants to do, and he blew everything. Like
Yeah,
his
it's
father
like
gave him this endowment, and he just blew it, and then he borrowed money and he blew it. So it's like the two opposite.
Yeah, but I like, yeah, but it's like tiered, I guess. Andrew McCarthy is like the moral center, and then there's Jamie who's in between, and then there's Robert who's like down in the dumps.
also the other thing I like about this movie is that in the beginning they tell you that the protagonist and is going off to college and his girlfriend is fucking his best friend, which is accurate because that's what happens with teenagers. That's what they do.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that was an artsy moment. I like that,
but it's
because
realistic.
But yeah, it was. But and they did
That's
that.
what would happen in that situation. Oh, take good care of my girlfriend while I'm gone.
Don't worry, I'll take care of her.
Like that guy, the bad boy. I'm gonna leave my girlfriend alone with the bad boy while I go be a good boy and go to college, and nothing's gonna go wrong. He's gonna take good care of her for me.
She sprung it on him because she's like, I was gonna go. They had planned to go, but then she's like, I'm not going. And that was in that black and white. That was in that black and white part.
Yeah.
But even like the whatever stuff they put on Robert Downey Jr.'s lips, that grossed me out.
It's disgusting.
And even in one scene they had a.
I couldn't get that out of my head for days.
Yeah, it was like, damn. And he's sleeping at the beach in the park and stuff. But it was like if you think about it, I always had a fear becoming homeless. And I thought about it a bunch, more than necessary. And the path to homelessness is what I found is gradual. It's not instant. It's gradual. And he could have like saved himself any point of the time, but he kept on having this dream because he blew his endowment, and then the uncle, and then he can't get that. Now he's like, how is he going to pay? Now he still has to trick, because he was tricking through the whole movie with Rip, and then you find out that he's tricking. It's alluded to the audience, and that one scene where Andrew comes in and gets Robert. I paused it. You see Robert's penis.
Really?
Yeah, I paused it. I saw it.
You paused it, huh?
Yeah.
What are you talking
Wow.
about, though, that he's tricking throughout the
Judy.
whole film?
I missed it. Sorry.
You see Robert Downey Jr.'s penis in the movie.
Is it when they show his
Yes.
friend walks in on him and he gets up and his pants.
Yes, and he
Okay.
pulls it
I
up.
guess they didn't look close enough.
Hey, you got to pause it. So.
I was cleaning on it watching the movie.
Oh, well, next time, because
And you had this on VHS, right, Sean? So
I
you knew
did.
to do
Yes,
that.
I got it.
Was it worn out on your VHS? Was it worn out at that
Actually,
point
now that you think about it,
from stopping it so many times?
I could just hold it like this. I could just go like this on the cardboard. But yeah, I worked next to a DVD store who was like a video rental store transferring to DVD, and they were selling all their VHS for $1. So every day after work, I would go in there and I would see what was there. and I got a lot of VHS there. I got Miller's Crossing and a bunch of others in Less Than Zero. I got some like Sonny Chivas. It was really cool. Yeah, it was for $1.
So you
Chiba.
still have a VHS player,
A VCR?
a VCR.
Yeah,
I
people
do.
say that now.
I
People
do.
say that. In the attic, I gotta hook it up because I have a lot of VHS still. Boxes like this, and I
There's stuff
wrapped
that
it
you
all
can
up.
only get on VHS still.
Yeah,
that is
that's
not
why it's like
available.
Mom, just leave these in the house. That's it. Throw everything away. Just leave these in the house. Oh my God, I have such a great collection.
I used
Yeah,
to
so
have like
that's-
every Woody Allen film on VHS.
Yeah, I used to have them all memorized up until like 2000.
Oh wow! So you're a
Yeah.
huge Woody Allen fan, huh?
No, I just made it a point to memorize his films. I'm
That's
not that
really
big of a
weird.
fan. Yeah, it's I was bored. It was the country.
This is
I wasn't in the city. I didn't grow up in the city.
So you don't like Woody Allen?
We have a
I
great
think
collection
some
of
of his stuff-
weirdos here at Obscuria Films, man.
It's a very
Interiors.
strange bunch we are.
1978's Interiors
Yeah, what about it?
is a masterpiece.
Okay, let me tell you
One of the
something.
most depressing movies I've ever
It's
That is the
really
most
good, though.
depressing movie ever. I was left alone with that movie by my parents. One day they went out with friends and they were like, "Here, watch this." You're an
Thinking it's a
actor.
comedy. They thought
No,
it was
they
a
knew
comedy.
It was what it was. They just
Oh.
thought I needed to watch, a deep acting film. And I said, "What do you want me to do? Kill myself while you were gone?"
My mom
This
made me
must-
watch The Godfather when I was a child. But yeah, so I see what you're saying, but I still like Interiors.
The mother in that movie has not a single redeeming quality.
Geraldine Page,
Yeah.
or
She
Wait.
just
She's just a miserable person.
the one who walks into the water.
no,
Yeah.
she's not a miserable. She gets a divorce and she can't get out of the hole. and
Wait,
then
am I
the death-
getting this confused with a different?
Yes.
Geraldine Page is the one who walks into the water.
He
At
doesn't.
the
No, but
end
I
of
don't think Abram
Interiors.
knows what Interiors is.
No, I've seen Interiors,
Oh.
but I might be getting it mixed up with another
Oh.
Woody Allen. Interiors is the one with the doesn't a.
It was the drama.
It's
Yeah,
black.
well,
Like
there's
the
been many
one, not
dramas.
comedy.
Anna and Her Sisters is also a drama. I'm saying
Oh.
we're going way off topic here.
We've been all over tonight.
We should have a Woody Allen episode.
We could have a shitty Woody Allen movie episode.
His
Our
new
least favorite
movie
movie.
supposedly is terrible.
Yeah, he's
Anyway.
not good anymore. Hollywood Ending was shitty. All of Blue Jasmine was crap.
Judy, do you have anything more to say about Less Than Zero?
No, I just wanted to add, my husband just sent me a thing saying that Less Than Zero is a book that Quentin Tarantino would like to take a stab at remaking.
Really? 'Cause,
Really?
It's an article,
That
the article I
is-
found was from 2020. That
That's
there's
something
certain
I'd like.
ideas he has, and that's one book that he would like to adapt.
That's cool because
It'd be
Quentin.
interesting to see his
Oh,
take
sorry.
of
I would
that.
like
It
to see
definitely
that
would not
movie.
be as pretty and red or artistic. It would
It
be,
would be more bloody
different way.
somehow. I'm just weird how he would put in a rape scene. But see, the thing about Quentin is that he said he'll only make 10 movies, and he's made 9. So there was rumored he was going to do this like the next Star Trek, which I thought was a bad idea. But yeah, him doing Less Than Zero, I think would be cool because he's never adapted before. Well, he has, but he's never adapted from a novel. In fact, all this stuff is kind of he just takes from Asian films. Half his films are Asian films remakes. Anyway, but yeah. Oh, so for our next show,
yes.
it's my choice, and I'm going to choose the gem. What Happens in Vegas
What happens in Vegas?
from 2028. It's a romantic comedy. I love romantic comedies, and it's
You do?
brilliant.
You said
I do.
2028.
Yeah,
20
2028. What do you have, a time machine?
20. What I? But you know what I mean.
2008.
2008.
2008.
What did I say?
I thought you were trying to make some kind of
2028.
obscure
No,
joke.
it was released in 2008. Ashton. I don't
Okay.
think Ashton's that great, but he's brilliant in this.
You're off by
Cameron
20
Diaz,
years.
Wow.
and it's a rom-com too.
Okay.
Wow. I
Oh,
thought
my
I was
two
the one to
favorite
pick the
actors
choose.
are in it: Cameron Diaz and Ashton Kutcher. This is going to be fun.
Oh,
I
God.
love
It's
this
staple to my
movie.
eyes.
I love
love this
a
movie.
good romantic comedy, so
It's
and
a
a bad
great
one.
genre.
I love a bad one too.
This, I mean, I guess, but it's brilliant. As a rom-com, it is really one of the best.
Why don't we all fly to Vegas and do it from a hotel room in Vegas just to promote the show a little bit?
Judy,
What?
you can bring the kids. It'll be a show. They have shows in Vegas now. It's for the family now.
Yeah.
Family?
Yeah, Vegas is now a family-friendly.
Yeah,
Jeremy can go to one of the family casinos and gamble at what?
No, but they have a lot of
Got
shows
two
and
baby
stuff.
carriers.
Yeah, we'll go to the
They
family
like-
casino, then we'll go to the family strip club,
No, they
then
have
we'll go to the.
they have theatrical shows from kids, magicians, others.
Yeah.
So,
Alcohol and candy.
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of would want to watch a show of Sean watching movies because I feel like you're probably so like reactive to it.
Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I pause it. I'm like, I can't take it, and I walk.
You know what?
I do honestly, and I come back and
I picked a winner for Sean. This is the first time somebody's picked a movie that you've been utterly enthusiastic about.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah, and besides my own.
You
of
haven't
course.
trashed. This is like the first one where you're like, yeah, excited about it.
Yeah, I was. And I'm glad I
And
reviewed it.
I'm proud of that, but I'm also a little disappointed that I didn't get to see more hate from you today because I love how.
Oh, I mean, I
much
didn't want
hate you throw
to. I
at
didn't
these
want to
movies.
trash kids too much. I didn't want to. And you seem like you're taking it well, and that's.
No, I didn't.
If you know
Listen,
what it is.
dude, your criticism of kids is completely 100% on point. I don't think
Because
there's
I
much
wrote-
Kids
more to
made me
say.
nauseous, if it means anything.
Yeah,
It made me
like-
fall asleep, and when I wasn't asleep, it made me nauseous.
Well, it was just like 10 minutes of girls talking about sex. Great. Yeah, let's talk about
that
semen.
reminded me of Spike Lee's Jungle Fever when he has that scene where all the women are talking about how they can't get no dick, and if they can't get the dick they want, they'll go get Zulu dick in Africa.
Or
There's a
so-
scene,
yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah.
this is like the Oprah show, and kids has a scene. I hate that. I hate when people aren't individually mic'd and they're just let them talk like it's
You
a
saw their
party.
mics too. You saw their mics in their shirts.
Well,
too.
I didn't see the mic, but
I didn't see
it
it.
sounded like they were
Right
all
here.
on the same mic. For those of you with a little trivia, for those of you who like the Milwaukee Brewers, Jamie Gertz is married to the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers and is one of the richest women in America, if not the richest actress in America.
Good for her. Good for
God,
her.
just
I always
For
like
Jamie Gertz fans, she's worth $1.5 billion.
she's a billionaire.
1.5 billion.
Yeah, she's
She-
her and her husband are they're a billionaire family.
Where's she in this whole women's lib thing? Why can't she be a role model?
Because she probably doesn't want to deal with the bullshit of a degenerate
Exactly.
society that we live in, and she's probably just like
No,
kinda
just be-
hiding. What is she gonna do? Get up there? I'm gonna be a
Yes!
spokesperson. Are you
Hi,
kidding
Yes!
me?
remember
Bro?
me? I'm
It's
It's
Jamie
better than
Gertz.
what they
Are
have.
you fucking
No.
kidding me?
No,
Sean?
it's better than what they have. That's all I'm saying.
Did you understand how you don't understand how this works?
I
You're
guess.
also married to money, so you're not supposed to do that.
If you got
If they-
money and you want to be if you got money and you want to get up there and be the mouthpiece for the new generation, you have doesn't matter how much money you have, all the other money people
I'm just
and
saying
Holly,
nobody-
the whole machine is going to make you
No,
play
this
their
is what I'm
game.
saying.
You can talk about
Nobody-
this, you can't talk about that.
Nobody ever talks about Jamie Gertz. I guess is my point. That's why.
Why would
She used to be.
Because
she
she's a
used to be talked
billionaire.
about all the
Because
time.
she's not
one of
in
the biggest
public.
things
She's
ever.
not a public figure anymore.
But other. Okay. All right. Okay.
She was in a sitcom in 2012.
Was she?
That's the last time I really saw
That's
her.
almost 10 years ago.
She paid for it. I bet.
One of
I
the
found-
movies
I
I,
found
love
her
that
here.
nobody's seen is Solar Babies. If you want to
Solar
watch
Babies
a
is
good
awesome.
sci-fi movie with a kid, Solar Babies.
Solar
is a
Babies
great
is
movie,
awesome.
1986.
What's his name? Bodhi or Bodhi?
Bodhi or something.
Yeah, it's Bodhi or Bodhi. That movie, that's a good one. I'm not gonna that, but this week we're going to do What Happens in Vegas, and then I might do Tron Legacy after that. But Solar Babies is a good one too. All right.
Please don't do Tron Legacy. Please.
You know, listen,
We have
you
veto
guys-
power. We have some veto.
No,
If it's
what?
really bad, come on.
Tron, what? No, no, Tron Legacy is not bad.
I don't
I
want
don't
to
know
do
if it's
something
bad. I
that
didn't
like
see it.
people actually could go to in their lifetime and walk
But
out.
it's a
of.
modern one. It was 2011. You know.
That's what I'm talking about. It was a total bomb.
I never even saw the first Tron.
Oh, the first
Man,
one is awesome.
Abram.
and the video game Tron.
It's
Jesus
Disney
Christ.
made it. Disney made it. Believe me, you don't need to see the first one. They fill you in and everything. Disney.
Wait, I shouldn't see that. Why shouldn't I see the first one though?
Because it doesn't. Because they fill
No,
you.
see the first Tron.
Don't
so you
see
can
the first
understand
Tron.
how
No,
bad-
don't
how
do it.
Bad
Don't
Tron
do it.
Legacy is.
Don't do it.
What's
It's
wrong
as-
with seeing the first one?
Tron
See the
Legacy.
first one is
It
great.
still made a profit. It still made a profit, just not big enough, but it still made a profit.
Okay, that's two
And the
reasons
soundtrack.
people
No, I'm
went
just
to
saying. No,
Tron
we're doing what
Legacy.
happens.
But that's not what we're watching this week. So
No,
what is it
I'm
called
sorry.
again?
I got
What
it.
happens in Vegas?
2008. What happens in Vegas? Question mark with Ashton. I'm just thinking about how wonderful the movie is. Rob.
We could do a
Corddry.
whole series of Vegas movies because there are
Yeah.
lots of bad Vegas movies.
I've never seen Honeymoon in Vegas. I did see 21. 21 was good. 21.
21 is
Oh.
good.
Yeah.
The original Ocean's 11 is bad, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Isn't the
No, the
Hangover?
original with
Oh, the one with Sinatra,
Sinatra.
and all them? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no.
But the new trilogy, Ocean's 13, is hysterical. Hysterical. It was the best one, I thought. Though I thought those got better as they went.
Which is
But
the
yeah.
one that the women did. I never saw it, but is that Ocean's 13?
The women's
Oh, they
version
did the
is 8.
female version.
The female version is Ocean's 8.
Oh, okay.
Because
And that
women are such badasses compared to men that you only need 8 to do a heist as opposed
I
to 11.
guess, but
Ew.
to me, it's like, can't you just make your own woman heist? Don't be an Ocean's movie. I think if it wasn't an Ocean's
Yeah.
movie, people would have liked it, honestly.
Yeah,
More.
don't kill it like they did Ghostbusters. But that's
Yeah, it's like just,
But the future's female, Sean.
yeah, but
The future is female.
But
Why
the future
wasn't
never, the
Jamie
future's never
Gertz in
here.
Ocean 8?
We live
Why
in the
wasn't
present.
Jamie Gertz in Open 8?
We always live in the present.
All right, we're cutting the recording here.